Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today is 28th of June, 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So apologies for the little switch around, guys. I did say that I was going to do an episode yesterday, but not today. But I switched that around, missed yesterday's episode, but doing one today. And of course, you guys know that going forward, starting next week, the cadence for these episodes will be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday instead of every weekday, or almost every weekday. You guys know I missed quite a few episodes from time to time there. But yeah, as I said, like the new cadence will start next week. But let's jump into the news from the last 48 hours. So there was some big kind of regulatory news, I guess, or regulatory adjacent news over the last 24 hours in particular. One of these was that Coinbase has sued the SEC and the FDIC over FOIA, or Freedom of Information requests, and says that federal regulators are trying to cut out crypto. Now, of course, this is just continuing the trend of crypto companies suing the SEC themselves after being sued by the SEC, right? We originally had Consensus kind of receive a Wells notice over the, I guess, a bunch of different things, which actually turns out that they're still waiting on a lawsuit from the SEC for. So the SEC pulled out with regards to classifying ETH 2.0 as a security or something like that, or some other case they were potentially bringing against Consensus, but I think that they pulled out of that. And obviously it was because they also approved the ETH ETF, so it kind of would be insane for them to try to classify ETH as a security if they just approved the ETH ETFs, the spot ETFs, and had approved the futures ETFs as well. So there is still, I believe, going to be, or potentially going to be, a lawsuit against Consensus over, I believe, MetaMask and some other things like their staking products. But of course, Consensus sued the SEC first over this in order to kind of get ahead of the pack here. And that's what Coinbase has done now by suing the SEC as well. So it says here, Coinbase, which retained a consultant firm History Associates, took aim at the SEC and FDIC in lawsuits filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia on Thursday. The crypto exchange accused federal financial regulators of trying to cut off the crypto industry from the banking sector in the complaints. And this is kind of that, I guess, like choke point 2.0 thing that people have been going on about. I've been hesitant to really buy into this thing. I haven't seen any real concrete hard evidence that there's been a concerted effort from whoever to cut crypto out of the banking system. And I don't even think it would be a conspiracy or some kind of, I guess, shadowy cabal thing that's going on here. I think naturally banks find crypto to be competitive with them, so banks don't have an incentive to platform crypto companies, right? Because for them it's like, well, if we platform crypto companies, we're basically allowing crypto to grow, which is cutting into our bottom line, or cutting into our business. So let's not do this. So we'll see what comes out of this lawsuit. We'll see essentially what gets obtained by Coinbase here. I'm curious to see if there actually is or was a concerted effort against crypto as this choke point 2.0. But as it stands today, there's just a lot of circumstantial evidence. I want to see concrete stuff here. I'm not one to jump to conclusions. I don't like jumping to conclusions, and I don't like speculating on things. I like seeing evidence. And you guys know that. I always try and stick to the facts, the truth, the evidence as much as possible. I try to minimize speculation on these things. And I'm glad that Coinbase is possibly going to get us these facts and evidence without us having to speculate much further from here. So that was that one on the regulatory side, but there was also something that I guess wasn't directly crypto related, but pretty cool to see. So the Supreme Court ruled in a 6-3 vote that when the SEC seeks penalties for fraud, a defendant is entitled to a jury trial in federal court as opposed to being subjected to the agency's quote-unquote in-house legal proceedings. And Eleanor here expanded on this, saying, what does this actually mean? Well, this move essentially hamstrings all federal agencies, not just the SEC, by burdening them with having to try their cases in federal court. The Supreme Court ruled that the SEC's use of in-house judicial processes to bring charges are unconstitutional. So this is a huge deal because as you guys know, for a long time now, the SEC loves to sue various different crypto companies or various different, I guess, crypto entities and say, especially if they've done a token, or mainly if they've done a token, and say, okay, well, you've done a token, we think it's an illegal securities offering, and we've decided in-house that you are required to pay such and such amount, and then that's what we call a settlement, right? Which basically, in my mind, protection money to the SEC to get the SEC to leave you alone. Now, from my understanding, the Supreme Court has ruled that this is unconstitutional and that these cases actually have to be tried in a federal court of law. They can't just be done by some in-house legal proceedings that the SEC has, where obviously 99% of the time, the SEC lawyers are going to side with the SEC, right? They're not going to give a fair trial. It's basically like a kangaroo court, right? So this is huge. And as Eleanor says here, it's not just the SEC that is hamstrung now. It is other federal agencies, or all federal agencies, including, the DOJ, for example, including the CFTC and others out there. So a really big win, I think, overall, not just for crypto, but for any of this kind of mafia behavior that's been going on in the US recently, which has been great to see generally there. So as I said, guys, like with the last few months, even though you have a really hostile political party in power right now, hostile towards crypto within the Democrats, right? Even though that's the case, when you actually look at what's been happening, the hostility hasn't actually prevented anything, right? Everyone was going on about, the Democrats are so hostile towards crypto, which means, Gary Gensler is hostile. The ETH ETFs aren't going to get approved because of that. But then the ETH ETFs got approved, right? And then also, even further back than that, Grayscale won their case against the SEC. Ripple won their case against the SEC. Coinbase got a lot of the stuff that the SEC wanted to go after them for dismissed. And the main thing was the wallet stuff, basically saying that a Coinbase wallet is not something, is not a custodial wallet. It's not custodial, so it has no relevance to the SEC's jurisdiction here. So the SEC has just kept racking up losses, and I think that the establishment, if you want to call it that, has kept racking up losses against crypto, even though they've been super anti-crypto. It hasn't mattered. The rule of law has seemingly sided with crypto on most of the cases here, which has been great to see. And as I said, this new ruling today is an even bigger deal because of the fact that it basically puts the I don't know if you call it power, but basically puts the impotence back on the SEC to say, okay, well, you can't do your legal in-house proceedings anymore. You have to go through the courts, where the SEC has been losing in, and they don't obviously want to be in the courts because they know that they're losing there, so they'd rather do stuff in-house. Well, apparently, if I'm understanding this correctly, that is no longer going to be the case here. So just absolutely massive news here, and continues the trend of crypto continuing to win in the political sphere, even in the face of a really strong anti-crypto administration. I can't even imagine what it would look like in a pro-crypto administration. If you believe that if Trump was to win the presidency, the Republicans were to win, they would be pro-crypto and they'd actually follow through with their promises, then, I don't even know what it would look like. I mean, not only is crypto winning in the courts, then it has a pro-crypto kind of, political sphere to lean into as well. That would be cool to see. But as I've said plenty of times before, I don't think it really matters who is president or who has power. I think what matters is the courts. What matters is the rule of law. And that's on the side of crypto, and historically has been on the side of crypto, especially over the last 12 months, which has been great to see. All right, so moving on to some ETH tech-related stuff. So Reth 1.0 has officially been released. So after almost 2 years of development and a successful audit by Sigma Prime, which, funny enough, is the company that builds the Lighthouse consensus layer client for Ethereum, the Reth team is finally releasing 1.0, the first prod-ready release of their blazing fast Ethereum execution client. So I haven't tried this myself yet, but if you are brave enough and you want to run this for your staking setup or your solo staking or home staking setup, then you can. But you can also run it as just a full node. You don't have to attach validators to it. You can just run it as a normal full node, which I plan to do. Now, as you guys know by now, Reth is built in Rust, and Reth is, I believe, one of the fastest, if not the fastest, execution layer clients currently in production on Ethereum. I know Nethermind has made a lot of great strides in making sure that they can speed up their full node client here, but Reth basically was built from, I don't know if it was built from the ground up, but there was a lot of modifications and changes made in order to focus on speed, in order to focus on efficiency and focus on performance, rather than focusing on other things. Well, obviously still respecting security, because you have to respect security when you're a core client here. But I'm very, very happy to see that this is finally live as a production-ready client for everyone to play around with. Now, of course, I'm not going to be running my validators off this client. I wouldn't say anytime soon, but like for now, because obviously I want to make sure that I'm not going to, I don't think I'd get slashed, but like that I'm not going to go offline and then not have bugs where I have to like resync the database, or, things that kind of make it so that I miss block proposals. Like I'm always very, very sensitive to that. I don't want to miss block proposals because that's where the money is. Obviously, attesting gets you rewards as well and being part of sync committees and all that, but proposing blocks is usually where the money is and usually where the ETH is. So I want to make sure I'm online as much as possible so I don't miss blocks here. But I do think I'm going to spin up a Reth full node on some of the hardware that I have lying around. I have so much hardware lying around, guys. Like, as you guys know, my setup is pretty involved. I have a bunch of different things going on. You know, I have my rocket pool nodes, I have my archive node, I have my solo validators, I have my validators for my self-managed super fund, which is my retirement account, and I have a bunch of Raspberry Pis lying around that I like to run stuff on as well. So I'm going to try and run Reth on some existing, maybe more powerful hardware, and then work my way down from there. I'd love to see if I can get this running on a Raspberry Pi. I don't know if I can. Maybe I can't. And then on a Rock 5B as well, which is a bit more powerful than a Raspberry Pi there. But as I said, it is now production ready, so you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. And if you're brave enough, you can even run your validators on this. But as I said, personally, I will just be trying to run a full node without validators attached to it. And then it's just easy to attach validators to it later if you so choose. All right, speaking of validators, SoySpoke here shared a new report that was put together by MemPirate, Naman, and Chainbound. So they basically work within the Chainbound ecosystem here. So essentially what this is that it shows the geographical distribution of Ethereum validators. So we have had in the past, I guess, like maps like this for node operators, so the geographical distribution of node operators. But of course, it's very hard to get geographical distribution of the actual validators themselves, because the node operators and validators can be located in different parts of the world here. Whereas this focuses on just the geographical distribution of validators themselves, which is, I think, a first. I don't think we've had this before, and this is quite a detailed report here of how they were actually able to achieve this, the methodology used, so on and so forth. So you can go give the report a read for yourself. But what I do want to focus on is the map itself. You know, as we can see in the map, it's no surprise where validators are located, both East and West Coast US. Strong, I guess, like concentration within Europe, generally, I guess, like Western Europe mostly here, and then spotty, I guess, in Asia generally, and then in Australia, we do have a little bit of a green cloud there, but obviously not as prevalent as other places. Now, of course, from this map, you can also see where we need to do more work to get validators in these places. So South America, Africa, the Middle East, India, China, Russia, I guess, like they're the main places where we would like to see more Ethereum validators, right? Because it's all well and good to have geographic distribution as we have it today, but we definitely want to see the more distribution, right? We definitely want to see more blue dots as well, because it's not just the cloud, the colored clouds here. It's also the blue dots, because as you can see, there are no identified blue dots in most of Africa. Like in South Africa, you have 2 blue dots here, but most of Africa and the Middle East, there's just no blue dots. And then you can actually go over to Russia, and there's no blue dots either, from what I can see, maybe towards the south there on the border. But yeah, and in South America, it's spotty in general, but there is some going on there, especially in Argentina. That's been, you know, there's been a lot of people in Argentina that's been big crypto supporters, but generally I think that it's vastly under, I guess, represented in Africa and the Middle East. You can see that here. And now I'm not going to get into the geopolitical reasons of why this is the case. You can imagine why this is the case, right? Such as the fact that on average, people in these countries are poorer, right? Which means that their first priority isn't to run an Ethereum validator or full node, because running an Ethereum validator is very costly here. So if anything, I think this map shows generally kind of wealth levels in the world, right? Because if you're running a validator, you need to either have 32 ETH, or you need to be part of a DVT set, and the minimum of that is 3.2 ETH, or you need to be you need to be part of the Rocket Pool, I guess, protocol. That's 8 ETH plus, I think, 2.4 ETH or something worth of RPL, right? So the barrier to entry of being a validator is much higher than a full node, because not only do you need the hardware, which is cheap, relatively cheap, but you need the ETH collateral as well. And you don't just need 32, you don't need 32 ETH, but you need, I mean, at minimum, I would say 3.2 ETH, the DVT squad staking there, which is incredibly new, by the way. So there's not many of those live right now. But 3.2 ETH is a lot of money, guys. Like the total net worth of a person in a lot of these countries doesn't even get close to 3.2 ETH. That's their whole net worth, right? So I think, if anything, this just shows wealth distribution across the planet. I mean, it makes sense as well, right? But at the same time, that shouldn't be a blocker for us. That shouldn't be something that's stopping us. I would love to see us bring that barrier to entry down and let people run validators in these parts of the world if they want to, and if it's possible for them to do that. But at the end of the day, this goes beyond crypto. This, as I said, is more to do with wealth distribution generally, and that's what's going to be the main blocker here. I mean, it's the same thing for full nodes too, guys. Like, even if you only need to spend $500 to run a full node, right, on top of your internet connection too, don't get me wrong, but he's still going to price out probably I don't know, half the world at least, right? Half the world's population at least, because of the fact that they just simply can't afford it. And we shouldn't, as I said, we should lower the barrier to entry as much as possible, but there is a flaw here. There is a wealth flaw here, and that's not something that crypto can do much about. Crypto, in my opinion, I've held this opinion for a very long time, is not going to solve wealth inequality. It is definitely going to, at least if we build it right, is definitely going to help with giving more opportunities to people around the world to get involved with a financial system and give more financial opportunities that way, but it is not going to solve wealth inequality generally, right? Like, it's definitely not. I think that it may even exacerbate it, to be honest. And I think wealth inequality generally is a much broader topic than just crypto. It's something that needs to be focused on, obviously, by nation states themselves and the governments themselves and humanitarian efforts and all that sorts of stuff there. But yeah, it's still cool to have this map. But as I said, it definitely seems like it is, I mean, just based on the facts and circumstances, it is a wealth distribution map more than it is showing where people would like to run Ethereum validators. So yeah, that's kind of my take on that. But anyway, you can go read the full report for yourself. I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, speaking of running Ethereum nodes and validators, the Ethereum on ARM account has tweeted out that they have managed to do a fresh sync of Geth and Nimbus on a ROC5B 16 gig RAM using only 2 physical cores. And this was something proposed by Nick Dodson here about what the minimum hardware requirements to run an Ethereum full node are. Well, I think we have the minimum requirements from the Ethereum on ARM account here. So as I said, they're only using 2 physical cores on the ROC5B 16 gig RAM board here, and it syncs. Sync time was 1 day, 17 hours, database size 1.1 terabytes, and the hardware was, as I just mentioned, that board limited to only 2 physical cores, so they disabled 6 cores out of the 8, and the SSD was a WD Green SN3 52 terabyte. I believe that's one of the cheaper SSDs out there. I know that the Green SSDs are usually quite cheap. I'm actually just going to look up the price here so I can tell you guys how cheap this actually is. I don't know what it's going to be like in US dollars, but this is a 2 terabyte drive in Australian dollars. Let me convert this. In US dollars, this is $125. You can probably find it cheaper than that. But yeah, about $125 for that SSD, and then the ROC5B board as well. Just running 2 physical cores out of the 8 here. So yeah, great to see this. Great to see that we've gotten some real results of something syncing here. And I think Geth maybe is a heavier sync than some of the other maybe some of the other execution layer clients out there. So maybe you could get this down even further. And the sync time wasn't too long. 1 day, 17 hours is actually quite short. So yeah, just once again speaking to how easy it is to run an Ethereum full node on low-powered hardware. Doesn't really say anything about validators because this is just a full node here, like an execution layer client, a consensus layer client. Validators obviously a different game. They're light on hardware, very heavy on capital because you need that 32 ETH, or I guess, like as I explained before, less than that, but still very, very heavy capital requirements here. But yeah, anyway, just wanted to highlight that for you guys because I thought it was pretty cool. All right, so an announcement out of MegaETH today. So for those of you who don't know, MegaETH is an L2 being built on top of Ethereum. What they're trying to do is juice the EVM, like basically what Monad's doing as an L1, but as an L2 here. And they announced today their $20 million seed round. This is obviously a very big seed round. Should disclose, I mean, you probably guessed it by now, I am an investor in MegaETH here. I decided to go in as an angel investor. So what they're trying to do is basically get to 100,000 TPS with millisecond latency as an L2. Essentially, I guess what you could say they're doing is, as I said, like they're bringing what Monad's trying to do as an L1 to an L2, right? But I guess it's also the Solana approach of scaling execution, of being able to do as much TPS as possible with as low latency as possible. As I've always said, I felt like this was always better to be done at L2 as an L1. There's just so many benefits to having it done as an L2 here. And as I've said plenty of times in the past as well, the most exciting thing about L2s for me is not necessarily, I guess, like the scalability, because that's table stakes, but doing scalability in unique and novel ways, using things other than the EVM. I mean, they are using the EVM, but the thing is that this is like not normal EVM. They're juicing the EVM up to 100,000 TPS and beyond. And they're not the only team doing it. There are a bunch of teams out there that are doing this today. And it's going to be curious to see what this looks like, because at the end of the day, I don't think the hardest part is building out the technology. The hardest part is building out an ecosystem, as is evidenced by the fact that, like, if we go to L2B and look at the top L2s right now, you know, it's Arbitrum 1 and Base. They're the top 2, right? And that's because they've built out a really strong ecosystem. It's not because of the tech. Like, no one would argue that Arbitrum 1 and Base have the best tech or the the fastest tech or the quote unquote like most performant tech, right? They're essentially just pretty, I mean, they're EVMs that have been juiced a bit more because they're L2s and they're not on L1, but still, they're not anything kind of like crazy, like 100,000 TPS or anything like that. But they are successful because they've managed to build an ecosystem around them. So that's always going to be the uphill battle for L2s. And I mean, L1s generally, it's the same battle, building an ecosystem. That's what's very hard. So as I said, like the tech, the scalability, it's kind of table stakes stuff here. I'm glad to see the innovations happening. That's why I'm invested in them, because I love seeing this stuff built out and I love being part of this stuff. But at the end of the day, for every L2 and L1 team generally, it's all about growing the ecosystem. So I'm curious to see what MegaETH does here to grow their ecosystem out, because that's basically do or die for the L2s at this point in time. All right, moving on. So Fluent has announced that they have launched their first devnet for their blended execution network. So essentially what they're trying to do here is create a system where you can basically do execution in both the EVM and in WASM as well. So you can say here, the Fluent public devnet is now permissionlessly available. Developers can now build applications with logic written in both Rust and EVM-based languages like Solidity or Viper. In practice, blended execution enables unique use cases such as building a decentralized exchange in Rust that uses ERC20 tokens, enhancing a social feed with Rust algorithms, playing with generative art or game libraries. And developers can go check this out for themselves. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. Should disclose here I'm an advisor to Fluent. But again, this falls into what I was saying before about wanting to see more innovation happening at the L2 level on the tech side of things, doing stuff that's non-EVM, pushing the EVM to its limit, all that sorts of stuff there. Again, I fall back to saying that it definitely is still about growing the ecosystem, and that's what Fluent's trying to do here. They're trying to tap into a different and distinct ecosystem that is EVM, that is Solidity developers, but that you can bring other developers in that may not want to work with the EVM or may not care about working with Solidity, and they can write their programs in Rust, and they can do this blended execution where essentially they can write a program in Rust and have it execute as part of the Fluent an EVM system here, which is very, very cool. And I think this is the future. I think Arbitrum has obviously been doing this with Stylus, or something similar to this with Stylus, but this is definitely the future of blockchains generally, is allowing developers to build in whatever language they want, for whatever VM they want, and then just execute it all together so the end user gets the best experience possible with obviously the cheapest fees possible. And no need to worry about essentially learning a brand new language just to get started. Like, we have to lower the barriers to entry across the board for users, but also for developers, and that's exactly what teams like Fluent are doing. So you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, last up here, another big announcement out of Coinbase with regards to bringing people on chain and enabling mass adoption. And this is enabling actual mass adoption. Like, people who say that mass adoption is enabled by getting washed up celebrities on chain to issue their own scam coins and dump on their community, that's not adoption. That's literally just scamming people and grifting people. Like, that's actually one thing that's really annoyed me lately, is people calling that adoption. Anyone who's saying that is adoption is ridiculously, delusional. Like, that's probably the word I would use. What actual adoption is giving products and experiences to people that they haven't had before, and doing it in a way that they're not getting scammed. Like, I don't understand why this isn't a controversial thing, but apparently it is, because crypto Twitter is really stupid most of the time. But enough of my ranting. What has Coinbase done? Well, they've teamed up with Stripe to bring Base's faster, cheaper financial infrastructure to millions of businesses around the world. How are they doing this? Well, essentially, Stripe is adding USDC on Base to their crypto payouts product to enable Stripe platforms to make faster, cheaper money transfers to over 150 countries, and Stripe is adding USDC on Base to their fiat to crypto on-ramp to enable customers in the US to convert fiat to crypto faster than ever. You remember a few months ago I said that I wanted Coinbase to go all in on getting USDC adopted on Base. They're doing that, and they're doing that in really big ways. Stripe is a massive company, guys. It is powering so much of e-commerce online. And now that Base is integrated into it with super low or free transactions, with using USDC to move money around the world, to do e-commerce, to pay each other, and to just do it in such a, on-chain native way, is really, really cool to see. This is, as I said, what enables mass adoption, what enables actual adoption. This is what people want, or at least this is what people will get actual benefits out of, and people will get actual value out of. People won't just get scammed and grifted on. They'll have a nice experience that's uniquely enabled by on-chain products. So I'm really happy that Coinbase is doing this. And again, Coinbase firing on all cylinders here. They have the whole pipeline. They know what they're trying to do. They're scaling up Base. It's an L2 on Ethereum, so they get to tap into the Ethereum ecosystem. They don't have a token yet, which actually I think helps them for now. I do think eventually Base will have a token. Like, that's something that I don't know the timing around, but I do think it will happen. But I think right now it's really, I guess, critical for them not to do a token because they're building out their ecosystem in a really natural way. I mean, as I showed before on L2B, and you can see here, Arbitrum has a token, right? But a lot of that token isn't being used to incentivize usage. And their Arbitrum 1 has grown a lot since the token was airdropped. Base doesn't have a token and has grown a lot just naturally. Obviously, there are other things on the chain that act as incentives, like meme coins and stuff like that. But Base itself doesn't have a token, and they've been able to grow to number 2, even though all these other L2s have tokens. I mean, OP Mainnet is number 3 here, but they had a token. It's the same as Arbitrum 1 though. They already did their token and they've been growing nicely. Blast has a token that they've used as incentives, like pretty heavily. They haven't been shy about that. Linnea has had a token that they've used as incentives. Oh, they don't have a token yet, sorry, I believe. But they're obviously farming people here or getting people to farm for the token. ZK Sync, same thing here. Mantle, I think very similar, but I think that they're not like the others where they've got their token already and they've been able to grow their ecosystem out. Scroll doesn't have a token yet. Starknet, like if you actually look at the measure of TVL and activity here, it's incredibly impressive what Base has been able to do without a token and being able to grow without a token. And I mean, Arbitrum 1, I attribute most of its growth to it not its token either, like just growing out the ecosystem here. And Coinbase adding more integrations and partnership like this and going all in on USDC, which I believe, I mean, stablecoins is the biggest product in crypto. This is a very smart move from them. So I'm very glad to see them doing this because as I said, I think a few months ago, like they need to do this because they've got huge competition within Tether. And obviously Tether is incredibly popular on Tron. But now that Coinbase has Base and now that they have, I mean, for the foreseeable future, it's still going to be centralized. They have control over Base in terms of being able to scale it up really fast, being able to offer, really low gas fees or even like free gas on things like USDC transfers here. And then they've got the brand name in order to partner with other titans of the financial industry like Stripe. This is what gets us the next billion users on chain. This is what brings actual mass adoption in and sustainable adoption as well. Not the scams, not the grifts, not the celeb coins. That's all bullshit. That's all distractions. That's all short-term noise. This is the long-term sustainable stuff that I love seeing crypto companies do, and I hope to see more of this from not just from Coinbase but from other crypto companies out there. But yeah, I think on that note, that's going to be it for today, guys. So yeah, thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all on Monday. Thanks, everyone.